Resident Evil 4 Remake made me feel like the little kid me playing the original game all the way back in 2005. Don't blame my parents for that one, I was a rebel. Seriously though, the original quickly cemented itself as one of my favorite games of all time. I've played through it too many times to count at this point, and I've got to be honest with you, I don't replay it very much anymore. I learned all the ins and outs, hell, I could probably play it blindfolded. The point is, it's still a game I love to death, but it's dated. There are sections in the original that I really don't like replaying but suffer through because I just love the game so much. I'm happy to say that Capcom has really outdone themselves with the remake of this beloved game. I enjoyed almost every second of Resident Evil 4 Remake, and that really surprised me. Capcom robbed me of my bleak outlook and grumpy attitude and forced multiple smiles out of me during the game's runtime. I completed Resident Evil 4 Remake on standard difficulty in 10 hours. I fell in love with Resident Evil 4 all over again. This is going to be a relatively spoiler-free review with some talking points for both veterans that have played the original game and folks that are wanting to check it out for the first time. I genuinely think there's a great game that's worth your money for both of these people. There may be a few slip-ups and slight spoilers, such as enemy types and weapons as usual, but I'll keep my lips zipped about the story aside from a few minute things. If you want to go into this game free of any spoilers, this is your chance to step away and play the game for yourself. I will say now, from my perspective, it is absolutely worth your time and money. You have been warned, I'm going to get into it now. I'm going to talk to all of you veterans briefly before I open up to just talking about the game. Those that haven't played Resident Evil 4 2005 before, please bear with me. There's emotional whiplash at the start. This time, the game opens with a more sinister cutscene. It's new. Right after, comforting familiarity stepped in to caress me and let me know that everything was going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You've been here before. Only to have that comfort ripped away moments later with the new first encounter scenario. That's a common thing throughout this remake if you've played the game before. Set pieces will look modern, but will function in almost the exact same way as the original. In my opinion, almost every single change to this game, the modernization of it, was for the better. The original, as many of you know, had incredible pacing. The remake is even better. It just flows. I mean, I don't even know how else to put it. There's a real sense of urgency to the game, and it makes the entire plotline so much more believable with how the game presents itself. I found myself smiling so many times seeing how things were changed for the better, and doubly so for the things that made it from the original right into the remake. This is the game I thought I played when I was a kid in 2005. This is the game I metaphorically pooped my pants during when I saw that first chainsaw guy in the village fight. I'm just so happy with this remake. I really hope everyone that's played the original had as much fun and got as much joy out of the remake as I did. There are parts I miss, namely a cup boss fight. It wasn't a good fight, but I love the aesthetic. And parts I think the remake does a little worse, but the remake is a net positive for me. The charm is still here, some goofiness is still here, the over-the-top action is still here, and the likable cast is still here. Except Ada, she just sounds bored to be in another Resident Evil game. It's just a beautiful game for those that love the original. The rest of this review will be more broad and for everyone. I thought I was going to be able to separate this game from the original and just review this game on its own, but I'm going to be transparent and honest, I can't. There will be some bleed through, and I may mention things about the original throughout, I just can't help it. Alright, I'm going to talk about the story first and briefly just to get it over with. Just like the original, set after the events of Resident Evil 2, now using the canon of Resident Evil 2 Remake, Leon S. Kennedy has become a special agent working for the government, and his newest task is to locate the president's missing daughter, Ashley Graham. Off to a rural village in Spain we go. The classic theme plays as the two cops who are frustratingly realistic tell Leon that people are going missing in this little village. We arrive at our destination just outside the village, and cop with a sweet mustache has to pee-pee. He hears something and waddles off. Some time passes and his cop buddy is all like,
You smoke?
and we're off. That's really all there is to the start of the story. Things go awfully wrong, and there are many fun twists and turns along the way. It's really a save the princess story, except you save her pretty early on, and then it's an escort mission. But not entirely. The characterization of everyone in this game far outshines the original's cheesy action movie surface level characterizations. There is so much depth here, I got a little knot in my stomach at some points. It was just really good. This is the best part for newcomers, in my opinion. The goofy one liners and the over the top villain monologues are so well done in this remake while still allowing for the rest of the story to be more serious. It's a story about trauma, twisted beliefs and ideals, change, and people going their separate ways. It's careful and considerate. It handles a lot of these very subtly, and I very much appreciate that. It's not in your face, it's not trying to force you to get it. It's really well done. There's also a ton of context in this game that was missing in the original. Many files are found throughout the game's runtime that give background and lore about the various creatures in the village's past. It just all makes a lot more sense now, and it's just really nice. I actually read all the logs I found from start to finish. They're not overbearingly long and cut to the chase. I will talk about one character because they're someone that I'll mention later when I talk about gameplay, and that's Luis. He's a mysterious, wisecracking guy that gets a whole lot more attention than he did in the original, and I love it. I still love the original Luis, but man, they did him right here. He's really fun. I don't want to spoil stuff, but there's lots of familiar stuff and lots of fun new stuff in the otherwise familiar story beats. Enjoy it. Okay, with the story done, we'll get into the rest of the game, which is luckily gameplay. I can't believe I have to say that, but I'm sure we all know that developers use the word gameplay very loosely. Resident Evil 4 Remake is the best action survival horror game I've ever played. This is the first time in a long time that I've felt this sense of survival in survival horror, and it happens to be in an action survival horror game. It's pretty funny, honestly. I normally play Resident Evil games and wind up with hundreds of rounds to spare by the end. I was stressing in RE4 Remake, wondering if I'd have enough resources to make it to the end of standard difficulty. I really had to plan how I was going to engage in every location, and I found a solid method to my madness, but things would go wrong at every turn and I'd have to scramble to get my rhythm again. This is what I've been looking for from Resident Evil for years. It's not an exceedingly difficult game, don't get me wrong, but I actually died my fair share of times. Not to be high and mighty, but to put this into perspective, my first playthrough of Resident Evil 2 Remake on standard difficulty, both Leon and Claire was deathless. Most other Resident Evil titles saw me dying once or twice, usually from insta-kill mechanics, which also does happen in RE4 Remake. But I actually died quite a few times. This game can be overwhelming. It's oppressive, it's gritty, you must survive. The action part is pretty self-explanatory. A lot of baddies are thrown your way throughout the various set pieces, and it's frantic. I really love this, it was refreshing. This game is not a cakewalk, and I might even recommend new players that aren't used to this type of game playing on the easier difficulty first. Leon feels absolutely amazing to control in this game. This is the best a Resident Evil has ever felt, in my opinion. RE4 Remake is an improvement on the third-person over-the-shoulder gameplay we got in RE2 Remake in every way. Leon has a bit of a start and a stop with his run, like a real human, but it doesn't feel bad to control. It actually allows for some tight dodges and clever stuff when you get the hang of it. The famous 180 turn makes its return, and Leon didn't skip leg day. He can crouch now. It makes sense here. Leon did go through brutal training to become this way. Thank goodness he did. He's a joy to control. I never had a moment in RE4 Remake where the movement was the thing that messed me up. It was always my own doing. I also don't really know where to put this, but Leon has an animation to react to almost anything that happens to him in the game. This attention to detail is incredible and shows you that the development team really cared about the little moments and not just the large spectacles. Before I get into combat, I'm going to briefly talk about puzzles. I don't want to spoil many, because of course they're back in typical Resident Evil fashion. There aren't any really difficult puzzles in this game. I would even say that most of them are too easy, but I didn't mind. It kept the game moving, and even though they were easy, most of them were pretty cute. Except for the damn turning the marble puzzle. It's like the shadow puzzle from RE7. I hate them. It embarrasses me how long they take me every time. Seriously, is it just me? Combat time! A majority of the game is spent fighting when you're not exploring and running through areas looking for treasure. It's frantic, over the top, non-stop Ganado poppin' action. Combat is where my "this is the game I thought I played as a kid" statement is the most relevant. It's tense, and you're forced to react and make on the fly decisions constantly. It's stressful, and that's a great thing. You're there in the thick of it, swarmed by the hostile locals, and you feel alone. There are rarely moments to breathe when a fight starts. If you get trapped, you need to make an opening fast or you're getting mauled. They don't pull punches here. You have to think 3 steps ahead and be prepared for your entire plan to go down the drain in an instant. As more and more enemies are introduced, this also adds new worries into a fight that must be taken into consideration. There's a ton of enemy variety in this game, and it's amazing. Chainsaw Guy? Now I have to worry twice about being grabbed in fear of an insta-kill. Even just Plaga popping out of heads, it changes the entire pacing of the fight. What about when you get into the flow? Oh boy, it's a treat. You become the action hero you always dreamed of. Quickly bobbing and weaving through groups of enemies, narrowly avoiding a hit before a quick turn, pop a knee, pop a head, roundhouse kick the one you got in the head, and still have enough time to suplex the other guy. Yes, the suplex is back, and yes, it's still amazing. It's awesome when you find your rhythm, and it's just all elevated when you know just how bad a fight can go. You feel cool when you do something cool in Resident Evil 4 Remake because you are cool. The fights are not easy. I'll talk briefly about the 2 side characters that you'll have by your side during some of the game. First up is Ashley. Once you find and free her, she's with you for a good portion of the game. She can be commanded to stay close or keep a distance this time around. No more, "Wait, follow me." I honestly would have preferred the wait again this time though, because staying back just got her grabbed more often than not. It was useful in a few later fights, but I rarely used this. There were also a few lockers that you can have her hide in, but there were so few, I wondered why they were even implemented. It's not bad, just weird how few I found. She's needed to get through some doors and even has a few cheeky lines. The dialogue is good here. I like this version of Ashley a lot more than I like the original, but the escort stuff is always annoying in any circumstance, any game. She can still get stuck on things and freaks out if you move just a little too far ahead. She can still be taken away by baddies if you're not careful, resulting in a game over screen if they make it to a specific door, but it's pretty easy to stop this from happening. The annoying bit can be when she goes down, especially in stressful situations. You have to wait for a relatively long animation as Leon lifts her back to her feet. If you don't do this, you risk her being killed. She doesn't have a health bar this time. She has 2 states, down and die. Being more likable makes up for the little issues here because by the end I was invested in making sure I got her back home. She actually seems like a girl that's in a terrifying situation, and she can be a hindrance like any normal person would be, but she still manages to make herself more useful than you'd expect in a few key moments. Next up is Luis. To contrast Ashley being a person that you must protect, Luis is here to help, and help he does. The first fight you have with him in the cabin blew my mind. It flows so naturally and almost feels like you have a real co-op partner. Shoot someone in the head into a stagger, Luis will run up and kick him. He'll shoot someone and let you know to run up and take care of them too. The banter and chatter is great, and it's always reactive to what's happening in the game. Luis will still toss you ammo like the original too. It's amazing to see how the flow of the fight changes with his help. You don't feel alone when Luis is around. I was thoroughly impressed with how these sections played out. They seem to be showing Luis around a lot more than I expected in the trailers, and I was worried he'd be around for a lot of the game. This is not the case, and rather his sections make the game better. You really get to appreciate how helpful someone else in a situation like this is. Having just one other person makes a world of difference when it's you versus the world. I loved it. All of the guns that I used on my first playthrough felt amazing. They're all unique and feel really good to use. As opposed to the sillier action reload animations from the original, they're a lot more realistic. I mean, if you don't finish off a magazine, Leon puts it back in his jacket for later use. You can also have a +1 in the chamber. It's really cool. I do miss the fun reloads, but it's probably to balance out running while reloading. Yeah, you can do that. I played the game with my usual loadout that I carried in the original, and all my faves still feel absolutely amazing. Knives actually play an extremely important role in this game. They need a section all on their own. The knife was important in the original, but it wasn't like this. Not like the remake here. The knife has durability now, and it can be repaired at the merchant. We'll talk about him later. The knife can be used to slash as well as stab, used as a get off me like RE2 Remake, the new parry, and it can be used for stealth attacks. Yeah, there's stealth in this game, so I'll talk about it here real quick. With the addition of a crouch, Leon can now sneak up behind unsuspecting ganados and take them out in a single stab to the throat. I love it. And I love it because it's not a way to avoid entire fights. You're still probably going to get seen, but you can take out a few before the fight starts. It's also a fun new way to handle some later enemies that I don't want to spoil verbally, but may do so visually. Sorry. It's a welcome addition. The parry is something I didn't use much aside from chainsaw guys and boss fights. On my next playthrough I'll use it more. It's not a bad thing, I'm just not used to it yet. Along with your main knife, you can pick up kitchen knives and other small knives to be used if your main knife breaks, or used before you use durability on your main knife. They have a very low durability, but it's a nice thing to have if you get grabbed a lot, or use the knife to finish off enemies. The addition of these small knives makes it really clear how important they are in this game. It's one of your most valuable tools. Every single way you use the knife costs durability to varying degrees. It's another thing to keep track of. Another thing that adds to the survival in survival horror. Healing works the same as it did in the OG. You have green, red, and yellow herbs that can be combined for various effects. The first aid spray returns once again and is your full restore. I happily inform you that Leon is still an absolute animal, and you can eat eggs, fish, and snakes that you find on the ground or hunt for yourself. They restore varying degrees of HP or can be sold to the merchant. Healing items weren't scarce, but they weren't exactly plentiful. Be careful. Hey, hurry it up. Let's talk about that guy. The merchant. He's back, and I still love him. His voice isn't as charming as the originals, but the voice actor still did an amazing job in my book. He's got a bunch of new lines and lots of new goodies. There are seriously a ton of items that weren't in the original. So he's your lifeline. You can buy and sell stuff, tune up your gear, and trade spinels for special items. Spinels are rare now, and no longer simply sellables. Money can get tight in this game actually. You can't go hog wild like you could in the original. I spent mine pretty fast upgrading my arsenal. Luckily, there's a lot more treasure hidden around the map for you to sell. You can go find these treasures, which usually require some form of key to unlock and receive them. And like the original, you can inlay gems into the items. This time, you get a lot of gems and a lot of treasure, so you can inlay these gems in various configurations for different boosts to raise the value before you sell it to our good old pal, the merchant. It's cool. Even though I normally don't care about stuff like this, I liked it here, because money is yet another precious resource. It was another thing that added to the whole survival part of survival horror. The shooting range makes its way back into RE4 Remake in glorious fashion. It's a fun little side thing to do, and it breaks up the pace of the game for a bit, allowing you to relax for a brief moment before continuing on. Instead of bottle caps this time, you receive tokens to use at a little vendor that gives you charms. These charms can be attached to your attaché case, which is back and still awesome, and give various little bonuses that don't entirely change the game, but can be nice little boosts, like plus 50% health recovery for green herbs. It's a fun reward for Blinkin' Cardboard. The merchant also has a lot to say here, and there's a pretty funny line where he gets upset if you go down to the shooting range and leave right away. He took so much time setting it all up for you. The least you could do is humor him, you monster. There are also side quests now. I was really wary of this at first, but they're great. They make you go back and revisit areas and almost always give you something new to see or fight. This is where the blue medallions from the original come in. Rather than being in one area, now there are a few locations throughout the game that have blue medallions to shoot. You'll find a blue parchment that has these requests on them, such as pest control, clear out the rats in a location, sell a specific item, or fight a powerful enemy at a certain location. Once you do the quest, you don't have to worry about anything. When you return to the merchant, it'll automatically turn in unless it's an item you need to sell. It just really adds to the exploration and actually gives you a reason to loop back around and re explore an area. You might even find some stuff you missed while you're working on that side quest. Really great stuff. I saved this for here, even though I could have done it after combat, simply because I don't have much to say without spoiling them. The bosses in this game are very good. There are some that are ripped almost one for one out of the original, and some that are modernized so well I simply had to smile when I was experiencing them. None of them are particularly challenging, but the spectacle of it all more than makes up for that. Oh yeah, the game's pretty, like, really pretty, but I'll let you see that with your own peepers. Overall, Resident Evil 4 Remake is more open than the original. It has impressive pacing, great action, tight controls, plenty of content to keep you replaying the game, and a well thought out take on the original story. This game sits firmly in action survival horror and implements all themes from its compounded genres so well, it's a must play if you like any of them. It's a wonderful experience from start to finish, and I highly recommend it. I'll be replaying this game many times over the years as I usually do with Resident Evil titles, and I'm happy to say that this remake sits at the top of my list. It did everything I wanted. It's a bit of nostalgia, sure, rose-tinted glasses and all that, but I think I would have felt similar even if this was my first time playing the Resident Evil 4 game. The game just has something to it, that old charm and personality that I miss from the older games of my youth. This is a step forward for Resident Evil. The way they handle action with exploration and a nice solid storyline makes me hope that we have more in store for us in the future, even if they go for a more horror-focused title that can absolutely use ideas from Resident Evil 4 Remake. I didn't think I was going to give one so soon, but I have to tell you that I'm going to give Resident Evil 4 Remake 10 golden chicken eggs out of 10. It really is worth your time and money. This is Resident Evil at its finest from my perspective. I happily recommend you check this game out if you love action survival horror. This one's a real treat. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe and leave a comment letting me know how you felt about the remake of one of gaming's most beloved titles. Or, if you plan on checking it out because of this review, let me know what got you excited. I really appreciate everyone that subscribed and enjoyed the content so far. There's plenty more to come. Anyways, I'm out. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.